Well, hi everyone. Today I have two new guests with us. They're actually not new, they're returning guests. They are Greg Durrett, to my right, from Future Secured Financial, and Rich Scarano, who is from Holgram, Koritz, and Scarano Law Offices on Greg's right. And we are going to have two shows that we're going to be taping today for you to be hearing. We want to talk about both financial and legal aspects of helping people to plan for their future and look at what they already have in their portfolios, if you will. So what I want to do is start off with both gentlemen talking about annuities, because they're kind of a controversial subject, and sometimes people get the wrong impression, I guess is the best or kindest way to put it. And I wondered if you could just tell us that the world as we know is full of solicitations and discussions about annuities. And I thought maybe if we could cut through some of the red tape, as it were, and break down what are they and how do they work?
Well, what are they? They're I mean, at its basic core, it's a contract between an insurance company and an individual, and it's financial. So it has, in each variety, a particular goal or outcome that should be pursued. Most annuities are evolving these days. They are not like your father's Oldsmobile, as I like to say. They used to be very, very stodgy and staid in that an insurance company would say, okay, you get this percentage of interest and that's it. And then when you go to take it out, you annuitize it. Now, the annuitization is a very, very difficult thing, and nobody really wants to do it, because what it is you're saying, all right, I would like to now make my annuity turn into a lifetime income stream. Well, you can do that, and that's one of the great benefits of that, is annuities will allow for that lifetime income stream. However, if you annuitize, and that's your only option in that type of contract, the older style, what happens is, yeah, you get that income, but you will never, ever, again, be able to change your mind and reach back and get any of that remaining lump sum out of it. So that's a very dangerous place to be, because if you have some emergency that pops up later in life, you don't have any more of that asset available. Some of the newer ones now, the ones that are a little bit more flexible, actually a lot more flexible, will allow you to gain access to your remaining lump sum, still give you that lifetime income, and be very aggressive in the interest-bearing side of what it's doing. They're linking themselves to various indices, the Barclays, the S&P, the Dow, the NASDAQ, so that you're actually earning much more, but you're doing it in a safe environment, because annuities, by their very definition, are not investments. They protect from risk. You can't lose the money that you've made as gains. Actually, there was a case a few years back where the government was trying to reclassify annuities as investments. And it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court then determined that, in fact, they are not investments, because an investment requires some risk of loss. So they're very, very good, they're very strong, but there are many, many. We could never cover them all in a show like this, but there are many, many varieties out there. And it's just important for folks to realize that what they need is to make sure the one they do get fits what it is they're trying to accomplish.
It sounds like the newer ones, too, are a lot more flexible than the older models.
Much, much more flexible. And like I say, they're very, very aggressive insofar as allowing people to earn market level returns without having that downside risk. So instead of seeing your investment results looking like this, you're actually seeing them go up like a ladder, because there's never going to be that downside. And then on the income side, they also have inflation protections built in now, where you can actually have your income start off at a level, and instead of being locked like that, because if you have $1,000 today, it's not going to buy the same things in 10 years that it does today. So you need to have your income increasing. These types of new products on the income side now will also have that laddering up of your income as the market changes as well.
So if a person were looking to try to figure out what to do with their finances, you hear the bigger houses, the Ameriprises and companies like that on TV all the time. Mm-hmm. And our seniors that are watching often will hear they're marketed to, on the television. How does one look for a financial planner or a person who is trustworthy, and what do they look for?
Well, that's a tough one because, first of all, you can check out people. You can do scans on the internet and things of the sort. But wherever people are, you can go to the various licensing boards in whatever state you're in. So if it's insurance or any other type of investment, you can go to those licensing boards, even lawyers, and you can check them out to find out if maybe, in fact, they've had some problems in the past with complaints and things of the sort. That's a good place to be. Second good place is talk to some of your friends that may have had a good positive experience. Talk to their attorneys. Talk to accountants that might know people so that you're getting not just the impression of the television ad, but you're getting the impression of people that have had some good experiences along the way.
Because what happens from the experience that I've been told by seniors is they get a phone number. It's kind of like the HGTVs and the home shopping networks of the television world. They get a 1-800 number and they call and they'll say, I just saw your ad on the TV, and then you have no idea who you're getting or what the background is. So at least if, and it's not anything to trash any of the bigger companies, I'm sure they have their own goodwill, but if you're talking about a senior citizen for our viewing audience on Cape Cod in Harwich today, my suggestion is that if they want to come into our offices and ask us to go on the internet to the AG's office or some of the other areas to check people out, much like you would a doctor to find out if there's any complaints made, at least that would be a place to start to know you have the right person.
Sure. If I just may add one other concept, and I defer to Greg in specific product knowledge. Key word oftentimes is independent. If I've had investment advisors in quotation fingers say that if you don't have the product, just get a hold of the money and we'll put the round hole with the square peg. Not a good strategy because they only have a product line to sell and they don't have the ability to be independent and shop for the best interests of the client. Because if we've learned anything over time, one size does not fit all. So independent, when you hear like insurance company, for example, automobile insurance, independent agents, they may in fact do business with multiple. They'll shop for the best rate, comparable coverage to get a senior or anyone else the best possible value for their dollar.
The one thing we also hear sometimes is a bigger company that might have your home insurance or your car insurance, and they want to wrap you around and also do another kind of insurance. And I caution people that it isn't always a good thing to be one-stop shopping. Sometimes it is. You know, your car and your house might be okay, but when you're looking to have your future and your financial future especially, you may want to get, I always say to get 3 estimates of anything, you know, when you're looking for a carpenter or something like that. So it's a good idea, I think, also to get 3 different ideas of what you want to do with your finances and compare them.
And I think I would be safe in assuming that someone who's an expert in automobile insurance coverage or home insurance coverage might not be the person that you want to risk your financial fortune, that you, however large that fortune is, that you worked a lifetime to generate, because they may not know. I'm just thinking of my own past.
Or they may have the same, like you were talking
That's
about,
it.
they may only have the
product line
one
and
tunnel
that's it.
product line.
Sure.
Right, and that's also where the legal and finance come together in beyond just looking at how you're going to vet that one individual or those individual products. It's critically important that you bring in the legal side of it. So people have trusts, they have wills, they have desires and whatnot, and if we've done all of our, if an individual such as myself does all the work that I need to do to get all the individual's needs and desires taken care of in my world, and it doesn't coordinate with something that Rich may have set up in a trust, well, really we've done a disservice to that person because we've done all kinds of things and there may be issues that we've made worse because we haven't coordinated. So if you want to really do your due diligence is once you've done all of that checking, check back with your attorney to make sure that the ideas that you're going forward with are actually going to match up.
Absolutely.
I think the saying is measure twice, cut only once.
Well, it's kind of, in the medical world, it's kind of like you have your primary and you have a cardiologist, and if they don't talk to each other,
Exactly.
and you're getting medication from both of them, that medication could interact really negatively. Hopefully today things are alleviated by some of the computer stuff with doctors, but financial world and legal world do need to dovetail with each other.
Absolutely.
And sometimes people think, well, all I have with my lawyer is a will. I don't have a trust or anything like that, so why would I need to check with that person? So that brings me to trusts, and I know there's even pet trust today, from what I've heard. But with trust, there are all kinds of types and choices, and I think when you're talking about annuities, they do have a place in sort of the overall spectrum to protect folks, but what should we know about what a trust is and how does it benefit people? I don't often hear of them in retirement planning as much as I do in protection. You hear of kids, special needs kids with trust. You hear of people who have Alzheimer's in their family and they want to protect before it gets to that second generation and that kind of thing. But can we talk just a little bit about what they are and how they work?
Sure. And like the insurance products or the annuities, it's way too large a topic. So we'll start with the very basics so we have an identification, at least of terms. A trust is a private contract between two parties, or more than two parties, which we'll elaborate on in a moment. But there are three players to a trust in general terms. The maker, sometimes called a grantor, sometimes called a settlor, the trustee, and then the beneficiary. And to review it, the grantor is the maker of the trust, the trustee is the manager of the trust, the beneficiary is the repository of all good things at the end when the trust is terminated or it's set up for the purposes of caring for the beneficiary, where the beneficiary doesn't even have any control over it, as in the case perhaps of a special needs trust, so that they don't become disqualified from state or federal services. So those are the parameters. It's a private contract, as we mentioned, so in many regards, it's outside the realm of what we would typically hear about in the form of involvement with probate at the other end of life. For some people, privacy is a very big deal. For some people, it matters not at all. But they are concerned about having things directed in and of themselves, how they want it done, as opposed to leaving it to people that they'll never meet, who might be judges, who might be clerk magistrates, who might be people who work for the county, as the county's trying to get and the state and the feds are trying to get their last full measure of taxation from this person who may have died. Trusts basically fall into two very broad categories, those which are called revocable, those which are called irrevocable or irrevocable. The revocable ones are, I make a trust, I have a trustee, I could even be my own trustee. There's some question whether or not that's even a legal trust. And for the moment, I'm a beneficiary. For some people, that's a way of insulating, not a very good way, but it's a way of insulating their other assets from any potential creditors out there. But essentially, those kinds of trusts are in and out kinds of trusts. You see these oftentimes in real estate. They buy a property and they put it into people will put it into what's referred to as a nominee trust, thinking that that's a way of protecting the house. Long and short of it, trusts can be structured. They have to be thoughtful. Revocable trusts are easier to work with than irrevocable because, as the term indicates, irrevocability says I still have those three participants, the maker or the grantor, the trustee, and the beneficiary. However, the trustee and the maker cannot be the one and the same person. These are typically what you see, especially in the latter stages of life, involved in Medicaid trusts. How do I generate enough paperwork so that, and you hear this phrase all the time, and I believe it's inaccurate, quite frankly, I don't want the nursing home to take my house. If people sat down and understood that the government may have advanced care and services and are seeking only to be repaid at the back end, it does affect the residuary of the estate to their children, but they're really paying back that which has already been advanced. However, if you qualify up front by, for example, using annuities and using the stream of income, dirty words for some but very, very helpful words for Medicaid qualifying, then you don't have a large chunk of money that are assets that are counted against someone for the purposes of qualifying for Medicaid. Irrevocability is a very big thing here. The government expects that rules are laid down to be followed, and that people have to follow those rules in order to qualify at the other end. And we could talk in details about how long the qualifying process is. But broadly speaking, those are the two broad categories.
You know, and I'd like to give an example of when maybe a trust and, like I said, the coordination between, say, annuities, life insurance, things of the sort, and how that would coordinate with a trust. If a person just has a will, give an example, and it's seemingly more and more common these days, maybe they have a grandchild or a niece or a nephew that might be special needs that they have decided out of the goodness of their heart when they pass away, they're going to leave a certain amount of money, and they put it in their will. Right? It very well may be that that amount that they're going to leave to that person out of the goodness of their heart is now going to mess up all the state benefits that they're getting from all these other different agencies. So you could have actually blown up a very, very good thing by not having it properly coordinated with what somebody's trying to accomplish on the other end. It's a third-party inheritance type of thing that could really harm somebody. And nobody wants to do that. I mean, when you're trying to give away and you're trying to be generous and whatnot. So that's just one example of where we actually see quite a bit where people don't coordinate that. And their generosity goes entirely in the other direction.
So if you were talking about a trust for a person when you were using the nursing home example, we do hear all the time, especially in our world, who do I meet with, or how do I protect my quote-unquote assets so that the nursing home doesn't get them?
Okay, let's just start in broader strokes. Every state, first of all, Medicaid is the problem, is the program, not problem. It is the problem for some people. But Medicaid is the program. Medicaid is administered, it's a federal program, and it's administered in all 50 states. So each state has their own version of Medicaid. Here in Massachusetts, Mass Health would be the purveyor of information. So one would have to qualify through Mass Health to be available to have benefits paid to a nursing home on their behalf. Doesn't mean that the person gets away scot-free, and I want people to think that the government's picking up the tab for some other person. Individuals, it's a sliding scale. Each individual will still have responsibility through Social Security, so whatever their assets are coming in, that they may have to pay to justify their own participation in the program. But to answer the question, and again, by way of example, I've seen trusts that were in effect for years and years and years, but they were of the first kind we talked about, revocable trusts, which are not part of the world of protecting assets against Medicaid. So to answer your question most directly, you need to go to someone who has at least an educated view of what Mass Health will be looking for, what kinds of trusts they will be accepting, who trustees can be. It was for a long, long time that children, I'm in need of help, and I ask my son or daughter to be my trustee in an irrevocable sense. Government didn't view that as a particularly arm's-length transaction, and the government would disqualify. Somewhat more liberal now than used to be. So as we get older, we start to lose the kinds of people that we trust to be managers of our estate. So children now are more acceptable, again, with the same concerns and controls, that it is still a business transaction, so that the government will say, after a qualifying period, 60 months in this case now, the rules used to be 36 months, once a trust is formed and recorded appropriately, from that point forward 60 months and a day, whatever the assets are that have been properly titled into that trust, case in point, a house, for example, that house would be Teflon as to any involvement by state or federal agencies.
But it still does follow, that's the big point I wanted to make, the 5-year look back.
Yeah, that was back in 2005, there was a bankruptcy bill. It was called the Fair Deficit Reduction Act of 2005. And at the time, politics aside, there was a move afoot to look at how wealth was being transferred from one generation to the next. And there was a position that was taken that said, why should taxpayers be responsible for paying for family X to have family X's children inherit only after a 3-year, a 36-month look-back period. The burden should stay on that family to take care of their own for a longer period, and that's how the 60 months to 5 years came about. And it was actually tied to a bankruptcy bill. It wasn't a bill in and of itself. That's why it was a
that's
fair
interesting.
deficit reduction act. It was a political quid pro quo. I'll give you this if you give me that, and that's how it got into business, to be 60 months. And there are always conversations about making that even longer.
There are. We hear 10
Constantly.
all the time. And
Yeah, but
we-
again, anything that's in place under current rules would be in fact disqualified from having to suffer through yet another period of time.
We do have seniors that talk all the time about making their children put the house in a trust, and then they will have, quote, life tenancy that they stay in. Well, what happens in our world is the mom and dad come down, dad dies, mom's in the house, mom thinks this is a great idea, and it's not within the 5-year look back, and they put the house into a trust for the kids, and then mom has life tenancy. Well, now the kids are no longer, they're off Cape, they don't live here. And mom is progressively getting worse medically for whatever her reasons may be, and needs help in the house. Well, eventually she may need to go to a nursing facility or to assisted living or something beyond the care of what's in the house. And then is usually when it comes up, oh my goodness, what do you mean you had to have a 5-year look back? Because it was either an older product that they were talked about, or it was done before they even thought about her having to go anywhere for a long period of time. But on the other side of the coin, they don't want to bring anyone in either to the house. They don't want to spend any of the, quote, inheritance money to bring anybody in. So this person is at risk in their own home.
I would always be concerned as to who, and this is my job as a lawyer, as to who my client really is. Oftentimes we talk to people my age about my parents' age, and we're not sure because the interests are not always the same. We do see an awful lot. I just had a matter not long ago where one of the ways of not using an irrevocable trust, because the family chose not to, was to use a deed. So mother, who was the only surviving person, decided to sell the house to her kids, but retain a life tenancy. Mom now needs a nursing home, and we should make a distinction. Assisted living is very different from nursing home care. Assisted living is private pay exclusively. It's my nickel and what my nickel will buy. Nursing home care has as we said, a sliding scale, but needs to be qualified for. But this particular lady was 92 years old. She had 5 older children. The children had the house. She had a life tenancy. She now needs a nursing home. And we just did this real estate closing within the last month or so. And that life tenancy has a value, a dollar value, as if she was selling the property herself, that she is charged with. While it may be small money, $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 on a $400,000 house, depending on what the actuarial tables show, there is still ownership interest in a life tenancy. Not to mention the fact that when you sell your house to one of your kids, there's always the possibility of that child having marital discord, divorce, and now they have an asset that the soon-to-be ex-spouse may be interested in. Life tenancies are not the easiest things to be worried about year after year after year, that my kids are going to be just fine with their marital status, or bankruptcy for that matter. If one of the kids files bankruptcy and they have an asset, could be a problem.
So when they talk about things like lifetime benefit riders, people that we work with all the time have a huge retirees concern with inflation eroding and not having enough money to live on the rest of their lives. They planned all this money that they thought was going to help to take care of them in whatever aspect, and it may or may not be enough. How do they keep pace with inflation? Is there any magical method?
Well, I'll give you the very quick answer and then turn it over to Greg. The good answer is inflation, as we speak right now, is extremely low. The bad news is there are no safe investment vehicles out there that even keep pace with the rate of inflation. So and that's where the word risk comes in, and that's a word that to be avoided as we get older. Instead of the concept of oil and gas exploration or going to Foxwoods to roll the dice and make my fortune, as opposed to the other extreme, which is a coffee can under my pillow, and I don't mind if I don't sleep. Effectively, that's where we are.
Yeah, there are. Well, this whole lifetime benefit rider came out of two problems. The first problem was that, and if anybody out there is a stockbroker, forgive the term, the stock jockeys out there would tell you, hey, let's look at an average rate of return across the market over a 10-year period. And all you need to do is pull out, if it's average return of 8%, we'll just pull out 8% a year, and don't worry, because the market's going to average that over a 10-year period. You'll be fine. Problem with that whole calculation is you're assuming that there's a gain each and every year if you're in the market. That just simply doesn't happen. There's always an up and down. And so once you erode that base number that you're working on, because you are relying on that income, so you have to take it regardless whether or not you actually earned it. Now you're going to erode that base number. It takes you twice, 3, 4 times as much to get back to that same principal number in order to earn enough to pull it back. So that calculation will implode. All right? You will wipe out all your money in pretty quick order. The next were those annuities, like I said, the old style, that required annuitization. Beyond annuitization, what they also did is they gave you that flat income. And it went, it'd go forever, but it would be flat. And again, now you're losing that buying power against inflation and all that type of thing. So these things called lifetime income benefit riders came out. And what they are is they're attachments to a particular type of annuity called a fixed indexed annuity. And some companies will charge a fee for it, usually very, very low. But what they do is they do actually step up as the market steps up. So that you start off at, say, $1,000 a month, and that's what you're getting this year. Well, let's see what happened next year. Oh, well, guess what? The market increased 5%. Okay, well, guess what? You're going to get a 5% increase in your income. And it locks then at that next higher plateau. So that if the following year the market dropped 20 points, you're still at that 1,000 plus 5% plateau. And then wherever it moves up from that point, it will then ladder up and go up again, and ladder up and go up again. So these things are relatively new things that have come out over the last, say, 10 years that have made it possible for people to have still that flexibility of access to their lump sum. But if it's really, truly the income they want, they put this in motion, they let it ride, and they just watch their income go. And so they're basically getting a pay increase with every time the market changes, so too does their income.
Is there a set amount that you start these things with? Like, do you have to have thousands and thousands of dollars? That's the other question we always get.
Well, depending on the company that you do business with, the typical minimum is around $20,000. But the interesting thing is these things will hold any type of financial asset. So they can take money from a 401k, an IRA, a Roth IRA, cash you just inherited, all that. Any type of cash asset can be converted into these. And then a lot of them, you got to be careful, because some of them say, well, yeah, you can start this, but you can't get income for a year or 2 years or 3 years. You got to make sure that if this is something you want to go immediate with, that the contract that you do get will allow it.
Is there an advantage, when you brought up a Roth IRA, is there an advantage of the annuities over Roth IRAs?
Well, see, and that's another discussion where folks they tend to blend the annuities and mutual funds and stocks into the term of IRA, Roth IRA. IRA, Roth IRA, 401k, 403b, all these type of terms, all they are tax treatment, the tax qualification status of a particular pile of money. The vehicle you put that in can be an annuity, fixed indexed annuity, stocks, mutual funds. So all of these things can hold those different varieties of funds. It's the tax treatment of it that when you refer to the Roth versus an IRA, that's the difference.
And I think how you bring this conversation full circle is implicit in Greg's answer. The issue of vehicles and IRAs, the terminology is there. Everybody's heard all the terms, but they don't know who to talk to pull them all together.
Right.
And there's a need to understand before you make something happen. There could be a one-time thing that you can't undo easily.
Well, sometimes I know when people that are in not quite retirement yet, but late 50s, early 60s, that may have, you know, that last company that they're going to work for, they had a 401k or something from their old company, and they've left it there and say, well, you know, I'll get to it and figure out what to turn it into or what to change it into. And I don't know a lot about the financial world, but I know that that sounds like a pretty risky, because if the company either goes out of business or something happens, it's better to get it out of there and into some other vehicle.
Absolutely. I mean, the 401ks in particular, and I have this conversation with a lot of folks, they don't understand that in actual fact, you don't own that money when it's in a 401k. And you can look at your own statements to verify it. It doesn't say it's your name. It says the XYZ company for the benefit of your name. So that company controls the collection of assets you can, or the investments you can use, all kinds of different controls over who they're going to have as a broker, all this kind of thing. So I always tell people, look, if you've got an opportunity because you've moved from one job to another or whatnot, take that money that used to belong to an employer and bring it back to yourself. And what happens when you take it from a 401k and you put it to yourself, it becomes an IRA. All right? But now you own it. Now it's yours. You control it. And it can be yours again. So yeah, it's you know, it's not just a problem for the person, it's a problem for the employers that have these fallow assets on their books, because now they're not able to make the necessary notifications of, hey, we changed this, did you come to that meeting? And they're actually committing ERISA violations every day, and they're at risk to being sued. So it's really not a good idea for anybody.
Well, the company I used to work for years ago was a nursing facility, and they had 401k, and they would put it, as you said, into various places that they wanted to invest it. They always did it in the tobacco company. And at the time, I had my mother-in-law already died from lung cancer, and my mother was dying from lung cancer. Yeah. And I just had the hardest time with having my little pittance of money that I had being invested in a company that was actually selling cigarettes that, you know, I had lost both mums from. So it's obviously much better if you can control it yourself and put it in the right vehicle.
Right.
Another thing that we have a document of in the Council on Aging is the Homestead Act. And I know there's been a little bit of confusion for seniors. They say, oh, you have to do the Homestead Act because it protects all your assets or it protects you from creditors. And that's really all they know. Can you explain what that is?
Sure.
And is it a protection, and what does it protect against?
Sure.
Okay.
The Homestead Act is based on a Chapter 188 of the Massachusetts General Laws. And essentially, that law has been modified in the last several years, towards the end of Governor Patrick's tenure, because it was uncertain as to certain aspects of it. Simply put, if you did a math problem, the fair market value of a house, $500,000, minus any mortgage, let's say there isn't a mortgage on it, leaves what's called equity, walkaway money, not to count paying realtors and so on. But effectively, you'd have $500,000 of equity. In Massachusetts, if you declare a homestead, that is to say, connect your deed from Barnstable County's Registry of Deeds, that's always found in a book and a page, to a document called a homestead, usually a one-page document. The two are linked up, and that up to the level of $500,000 of equity, your house is protected. Translated, and here's a horrible example, so please forgive me, you back out of a driveway and you kill 3 small kids. I think most people would expect that their house would be targeted as a potential valuable asset. Up to the level of $500,000, that house is Teflon, absolutely untouchable. So if you've ever seen commercials, and bankruptcy lawyers use this very much, file bankruptcy but save your home, this is how bankruptcy lawyers do it. They use the Chapter 180 exemption. If you don't declare a homestead, if you just refinanced your house, for example, yesterday, and you didn't have a document that was a homestead, you would in fact have up to $125,000 of equity protection. That would be called an undeclared homestead. That's by operation of law. The long and the short of it is, it's about $35 to $37 to do it one time. The law has now been clarified that once you do it, if you refinanced every year, that homestead would survive that same primary residence. If you sell your house, then it's lost.
Great. Well, I think it's pretty clear to see that we definitely need the legal and financial worlds together. And we will continue. This is going to be part of a series. This is the first part, and we're going to have another part that's coming up that's going to be a little bit more on long-term care with both of these gentlemen. So I thank you for tuning in. And if you have any questions, you can certainly get a DVD from the Channel 18 crew to watch this in your own living room, or perhaps send it off to your children if you're trying to make a point or have a question with them. I look forward to seeing you in a little while on long-term care. Thanks for tuning in.